All right, so continuing our awesome factoring. I love factoring. It's like a puzzle. It's so fun. And if you really like numbers, which I know y'all do, then factoring is really fun. All right, so remember, B goes up top, -8. A times C goes on the bottom, 12. Okay, so I need to think of two numbers that multiply to get 12, but add to get -8. So remember, in order to multiply to get a positive number, they both either have to be negative or they both have to be positive. So my two numbers that I get here are 6 and 2, and they're both negative because -6 times -2 is positive 12, and -6 plus -2 is -8. So typically if you have a positive number with your A times C and a negative number with your B, usually that's a hint that both of your numbers are going to be negative. Okay, so that's kind of like, you know, the light bulb there. And so remember, you write your quadratic term. Your linear term now consists of those two numbers that you found, the -6x and the -2x. And then you write your constant. So remember, your quadratic and constant say the same. The only difference is your little middle, okay? It's almost like you go from single stuff Oreo to double stuff. And everybody knows they like the double stuff Oreo because it's more cream. It's great. All right, so we're on our double date. So I've got x squared and -6x. So I see that they both have an x in common. So x squared divided by x is x. -6x divided by x is -6. Looking at -2x and positive 12. Well, some of us might say, oh, well, they've got a 2 in common. Cool. -2x divided by 2 is a -x. I already know something went wrong because I should get a positive x. I know what I can do. I can take out a -2 instead of a positive 2. So -2x divided by -2, that's a positive x. Positive 12 divided by -2 gives me a -6. So if you aren't real good with your integer rules, you really need to get good at it. So that way you're really comfortable with doing this stuff. Because now I've got my matchy-moos, the same table. We're sitting at the same table, and that's a good thing. So I record the table that we sit at. And then the two things that each group had in common. So x minus 2 is my other binomial, and I am good to go. Okay? So again, I'm undoing the distributive property. The other question that I typically get is, oh, but what if I write x minus 2 first and then x minus 6 second? That's okay. Okay, totally okay to write that, to write the x minus 2 first and the x minus 6 because it's multiplication, and multiplication is commutative. Okay, let's look at another problem just like this. Number 4 that I have. X squared minus 10x plus 21. I do my x method. My b is on top, -10. My a times c, 1 times 21 is 21. Okay. So now I have to think of two numbers that multiply to be 21 and add to be -10. That would end up being -7 and -3. They multiply to be and get a positive 21, but add to still get that -10. So quadratic term stays. My -10x is now going to be written as -7x minus 3x. Do you understand now maybe like that's the reason why you have to get two numbers that add to be your b, because you're replacing your b with the two numbers that would add to be it? Okay, so again, we're undoing the distributive property. And then I write my constant, my 21. Group them together. We got a little date night, double date. Let's take out, let's factor out something that's in common with x squared and 7x. You guessed it, that's x. X squared divided by x is x. -7x divided by x is -7. Then looking at the -3x plus 21, they both have a 3 in common, and by the looks of it, I should take out the -3, because that way -3x divided by -3 is a positive x. And then I've got 21 divided by -3, and that gets me the -7. So I've got my matchy-moos because my tables should match. X minus 7 And then my next binomial are the things that we had in common that you're going to call your girlfriend about and talk about. The x minus 3. So now I have completely factored that trinomial. Okay? So now let's look at it. We've looked at it where all three terms are positive. We've looked at it where your linear term is negative and everything else is positive. Now let's talk about what happens when your linear term or your constant is negative, or when both of them are negative. So let's look at number 5. X squared plus 2x minus 8. So my b value is 2, a is 1, c is negative 8, multiplied together gets me negative 8. So I have to find two numbers that multiply to be negative 8, so that means one of the numbers has to be negative, one of them has to be positive, and adds to be positive 2. So because we're adding to be a positive number, my bigger number is going to have to be positive, okay? So with 8, I can multiply 4 and 2 to get 8. The 2 is going to be negative because positive 4 plus negative 2 gives me a positive 2, and that is what I am going for. I need to have a positive number, okay? So it's very important, again, to know your signs when adding and subtracting and even with multiplying. So kind of like a trick that some people do is if I've got a negative number here and a positive number, the bigger number needs to be positive and the negative needs to be the smaller number. But if I have a negative and a negative, the bigger number needs to be negative and the smaller number needs to be positive, okay? Which you might, I think it's kind of unnecessary to like memorize that. Really just use your brain because you've got a very smart little brain that you got there, okay? Not a little brain, a big old brain. And I know that you know your numbers, and so utilize that number sense that you have. So I write my quadratic term. And then my linear terms, I have to break up with the 4 and the negative 2. So 4x minus 2x. And my constant is negative 8. So I'm going to group them. Got my little double date going on. X squared and 4x, they both have an x in common. X squared divided by x is x. And 4x divided by x is 4. Then looking at negative 2 and negative 8, they both have a negative 2 in common. Negative 2x divided by negative 2 is just x. Negative 8 divided by negative 2 is positive 4. So I've got my matchy moves. I'm good. So I'm going to write that matchy move of x plus 4. And then I'm going to write my what I have in common that you'd call your girlfriend about your double date, which is the x minus 2. And then I've got that factored. And just another reminder, you can always double check by distributing it all out and seeing whether you get x squared plus 2x minus 8. So then you know, like, oh, did I make a sign error or what happened? Okay? One more for you. And so I have x squared minus 9x minus 36. Oh, that 36 is written so bad. All right. So my b value is negative 9. A times c, 1 times negative 36 is negative 36. So two numbers that multiply to be negative 36 and add to be negative 9. So that would actually be negative 12 and positive 3. Because negative 12 times positive 3 is negative 36. Added together gives you the negative 9. So then I end up with x squared minus 12x plus 3x minus 36. Because remember, your quadratic and your constant just come down. And again, just a reminder, you can write your 3x first and the negative 12x second. You'll still end up getting the same answer at the end of the day, okay? Not every step will match maybe the person next to you, but you'll still end up with the same solution. So what's in common with x squared and 12x? I get x in common. X squared divided by x is x. Negative 12x divided by x is negative 12. And then with 3x and negative 36, the 3 is what they have in common. 3x divided by 3 is x. Negative 36 divided by 3 is negative 12. I've got my matchy moves, so that's good. I just have to write that one time. And then the x and the 3, that's what I have in common. So x plus 3 is what I have in common. Again, you can distribute it all out to see whether you get the correct answer there. Whether you get your original, to be able to check your answers. Other than that, That is factoring a quadratic expression. Enjoy. Have fun factoring.